I've called my presentation today, Enterprise and Supplier Development, a new era in transformation. So who are these small businesses? When we look at small business in South Africa, there's a very interesting stat from FinScope which shows that only 1% of businesses in this country actually employ more than 10 people. 67% of all businesses in this country employ, no one. They're just one-man bands. So when we talk about transformation and we talk about BEE and enterprise development, we have to understand the context within which we are working. So 94% of these small businesses have never used a business development support before. 44% cite that money is the reason why they haven't grown, and I've got quite a strong view on that, which is that it's not really true. And 50% cite that business strategy is their main obstacle. If I can just use this as an opportunity, I know we're talking about BEE, but for me that middle part here is very important. There is more money chasing good business than there is good business chasing money. Okay. What we need in this country is a compelling economic right to exist. When small businesses have a compelling economic right to exist, money will flow. And we are surrounded by many funders who are looking for good businesses to invest in. But when you test them for a compelling economic right to exist, they fall short. Then you look at from the context point of view, you look that 96% of businesses will fail within a 10-year period. 96% of all businesses that start out will not be in existence 10 years later. And anywhere between 50 and 60% will fail within the first 2 to 3 years. But what's very interesting for me is that 90% of those businesses that give up voluntarily. In other words, it becomes too hard, too difficult to carry on. Every day we get told we're too old, we're too young, we're too black, we're too white, we're always too something. And eventually that takes a toll on entrepreneurs. 87% of the businesses that closed down said that their lack of management skills was the number one reason why they actually couldn't take it anymore. So let me talk to you now in the new context of what we call Ayanda. Ayanda represents the entrepreneur, our black entrepreneur who's heard about this thing called BEE and supplier development and enterprise development, and now wants to come and supply products or services to an organization, be it a university or be it a corporate or be it anyone. Ayanda is, in this picture, is a female, but Ayanda can be a male or female. I'm taking him or her as the entrepreneur that we're talking about today. So when you look at this 2x2, you'll see that in terms of where supply development is right now, the issue with suppliers, black-owned suppliers, is that they generally fall into the bottom left-hand quadrant of the 2x2, which is low value, low strategic importance. Now, when I've put up this, I call that toilet paper, but many people have pointed out that, when you really need toilet paper, it's quite strategically important. So, but you get what I mean in terms of the fact that you can get toilet paper from anyone, and if you run out of toilet paper, the whole organization doesn't come to a halt. The top right-hand corner is what we're trying to move these entrepreneurs into the top right-hand corner, which is high value and high strategic importance. So in terms of, let's take a mining context, this is high capital equipment that if it doesn't work, the mine shuts down. And 95% of suppliers, black suppliers, are living in the bottom left-hand side. And so the new legislation is trying to move our black suppliers into the top right-hand corner, or more strategic importance, low value, high strategic importance. So that's really what we're trying to do. But now I'm not going to put on an Italian accent, but we've got two players now in BEE. We've got the transformation manager in the previous codes or the existing codes, which will change in April. We've got the existing transformation manager whose task is to get the points, is to get the 15 points or 40 points now on the new scorecard, and he or she is tasked to do that. And the existing codes right now is 3% of net profit after tax goes to create 15 points. And I'm going to talk about her journey or his journey as transformation manager. And then you've got the procurement person. And the procurement person wants to know I'm buying the right product at the right time, at the right price every time. So they've got two different directives, two different priorities. And what's happened with the new codes now is that we're starting to see the procurement having to talk to transformation because it's enterprise and supplier development. So let's start off with the Vito Corleone, he's the guy from procurement. When Ayanda approaches him, he says, well, you probably won't last, you're too expensive, you work from home, your quality stinks, your deliveries are not coming in time, and you don't know how to even to complete a tender. I chatted to somebody from UJ who was saying that this is a big issue about completing tenders. And you don't have any of the requisite standards certification that I require. So when we spoke about that bottom left-hand corner, this is where Ayanda sits, and she can't move into the other spaces. And then his consigliere comes up to him and says to him, well, we got to do this BEE thing. Don't worry, I know a guy. And when we look at how BEE has transformed, it's gone through 4 phases. This is what we call phase 1. And I call it Tokyo's my partner. Okay, phase 1 is I know somebody. So going back to there, I know a guy, and it was all focused on the in terms of the equity and ownership. And what happened in the first phase of BEE is we had all the usual suspects. And government then had to move from BEE to triple BEE, which was broad-based black economic empowerment, because you couldn't have BEE just as an equity deal with a handful of politically connected people. So the second phase is, now we've got to do BEE and support SMEs. Don't worry, I know a crew. And that is phase 2. Look how much I'm doing. So the second phase of BEE, which was about 5-6 years ago, was very much about PR, bums on seats, getting the ED points, enterprise development points, and getting the PR around it. So many of these programs were put out there with absolutely no relevance to whether they worked or not. So let me ask you a question, that if 981 people went on a new venture creation program, 981 people, how many do you think would have succeeded 12 months later? Anyone want to take a guess? Call it 1,000 businesses, small businesses went on a program. How many do you think succeeded 12 months later? Anyone want to take a flyer? 88. That's an interesting number. Okay. 10%. So that's 100. Okay? Okay. The answer is 0. Okay? It's the results of the NSDS show that although the Sector Education Training Authority trained 981 people, none of these, 0, not one succeeds. The only person who made money was the trainer and the caterer. But the actual people who were on the program failed. And these programs were going on mass, time after time after time, that thousands of people were going through these so-called programs, bums on seats, but so that ministers could report in Parliament that we had so many people trained. But the net effect was that none of them succeeded. So that was very much part of phase 2. And that drove us to phase 3, which is, don't worry, I'll tell them that either you get your results on the report or your brains on the report, your choice. So the third phase of BEE was really about, now we want to make impact. And currently we're sitting between 3 and 4, which I'll talk about just now, where impact is very important. So now people who are doing enterprise and supplier development, there's a lot of pressure to actually produce the results. And that started sifting out the men from the boys or the women from the girls, just to not be sexist. Okay, so that change started taking place about 2-3 years ago. And here we saw enterprise development points and economic growth in beneficiaries was important. And of course, the PR value still remains important. But now what we've seen in this space is the fourth phase is, hey, Luca, why don't we just make it easy for everyone to sell to us? It keeps the prices down, and we can change our image and become thought leaders. And so what's happened now in phase 4, this is where supplier development and the understanding that suppliers, that the more suppliers we can have, diversity in our supply chain, it'll actually drive down prices, it'll create more competition, more diversity, more innovation, and it's good for the business. And so supply chain development became part of the 4th phase of BEE. So now Ayanda now is in a different situation where if she goes through a supplier development program, there is an understanding that not only do we have to create results, but we also have to create market for her to succeed. And the incumbents need to be far more competitive to stay there, because over years, these inefficiencies built in these supply chains. So what's very important now is that in the procurement person is also very important to make sure that he or she is serviced in terms of their KPIs. Because what was happening, the pushback in the industry, and particularly in the mining industry, I might say, was that it's all very well to have all these suppliers, but they don't have the experience, their prices are not in comparative to what's in the market right now. So if my KPI is measured on that, how can you force me to bring in these suppliers? So what we do with these suppliers, we bring them into a first meeting with the procurement person who says, okay, I need you to get an ISO 9000 or whatever the case may be, SABS approved, whatever their requirements are from a technical point of view. We put down those requirements in the first meeting, and then we start to deliver on those and say that within 6 months, if we achieve these, a price point, a turnaround time, an ISO, a standard, whatever the case may be, then will you procure from Ayanda. And so we are able to bring her into the supply chain and move her up the value chain. So the model that we use now is this model here in terms of enterprise and supplier development. Just for those who aren't familiar with enterprise and supplier development, the current codes, which will be changing in April next year, have 3% of net profit after tax equals 15 points, and it's used for enterprise development. So the beneficiary of enterprise development has to be in a business that's registered, either sole prop, CC, PTY, whatever the case may be, and you are helping to develop that business. And there's a whole set of proof that you have to have in order to do enterprise development. The new codes are split now into enterprise development and supplier development. Enterprise development, 1% of net profit after tax. Supplier development, 2% of net profit after tax. So the way that we deal with this right now is strategically look how to use the enterprise development for the future suppliers of your company or organization. So we sit down with procurement and we say, look, let's look at your suppliers. 90% of your suppliers are white-owned businesses. Where can we start building black suppliers into your supply chain that aren't currently there? There we can get X company, Y company, X industry, Y industry, and then we go out and look for those businesses, develop them to a point where they can become suppliers. But in terms of the BEE codes, they are not current suppliers. The moment they become current suppliers, they go into supplier development. So that's the enterprise development part. Let's talk about supplier development. You've got 2 triangles there. The first is what we call non-performing or underperforming black suppliers. Very often in these supplier databases where people have got themselves onto a database and are being sent out tenders and might have an ad hoc engagement, I don't know what to use the word, with your business, where that you've bought from them 3 years ago. Those are what we call currently underperforming, and they might not have delivered on time, etc., but they've gone through your procurement, and now they're sitting there. We then go into those suppliers, and we work with them and put them on a program to get them to become performing black suppliers. The second category is current quality black suppliers, because they are performing well, because they're delivering well, have actually moved up the value chain. And some of these businesses that we deal with do over 200 million rands worth of turnover. These are big, substantial businesses. And their issues are very different to the smaller businesses. So we have programs for those much bigger businesses where they're dealing with HR issues and growth issues and working capital issues. They're dealing with very different things to the smaller businesses. And we put them on programs. Now, in terms of the codes, you'll see that if you move a company from enterprise development to supply development, you get a bonus point. And if you create just one job in your supply development, you get also an additional point. So this becomes a very important part of your BEE scorecard, the enterprise and supply development as a place where you can use your supply chain to create real impact in the economy. Now, I want to talk about, this is where I get a little passionate. We spoke about my passion earlier. This is where I get really, really passionate about this. Because what's happened now with supply development is that big corporates might have 100 million or 200 million, these big sums of money that they now need to spend on supply development. So what they do is they go and they go find a small business and they say, let's give you some money. Let's give you 5 million or 10 million or 2 million or whatever. And the problem now, and this really, really upsets me because this is a place that I've been working in for 14 years, is we are damaging these small businesses because they are not ready for that money. Okay? Not in terms of the business model or their mental paradigm at the time. And I'll give you a case in point. We worked with a company who was had the contract with Vodacom to go and do all the graphics around the containers. And his business was to go and get the order from Vodacom, and then he had a small team of about 10 people full-time, and then he would go and have the graphics printed somewhere, and then he would go and apply them, take photos, come back, show the photos, and get paid. He was earning at the time, and I remember this because he was earning more than me at the time, he was earning at the time 45,000 Rand, and he was still, after his salaries and everything, the business was making about 500,000 Rand profit a year. It was a nice little business. And then he got 1 million Rand in from a company, one of the banks, in fact. And we pushed back at this, but unfortunately we had little influence. What happened then was he then said, why do I have to get the guy who's printing to do all the printing? I can buy the machine. He's making all the margin. So he goes and buys a big format printing machine to print all this stuff. That means he has to move from his premises to a bigger premises. His rent goes up. He now has to have 2 technicians in order to run that. So now his costs go up. And of course, he's using probably 5 or 10% of the capacity in that machine. So now it's inefficient. He's got the insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Now he's worried about managing this machine when instead of going out to the client. So then now the client's squealing, he starts losing work from Vodacom, he's got this big overhead, and within 6 months, the business closed down. That's when you provide cash and you damage businesses. Now, we've built a model which is globally recognized now. It's a very simple model, and I must say I'm quite intrigued that it's got so much attention. I've been invited by the World Economic Forum to present this model at Davos, Switzerland in 2011. The World Bank I presented this model in 3 countries for the World Bank. In January this year, I presented at Oxford, and I'll go back to Oxford again to present the model at the Side Business School to the MBAs. And Wits Business School has written a case study on this model. And really, what this model says is quite simple. The first thing that you do is you get the business case right. You get the business model right, that when 100 Rand falls in the top, 120 Rand falls out the bottom, and not 80 Rand. And very often with these small businesses, we have got an issue where they haven't taken their salaries into account, and they think they're making profit, but they're actually not. And the moment you start to grow that business quickly, you just exacerbate the problem quickly, and the business goes under, very much like my previous example. So the first thing we do with these companies is make sure the model it works at scale. Then we start to give them access to markets, to start building in their volumes, and to start to see if that business can work in a volume state. At the same time, we work with a mental paradigm specifically with their relationship to money. Because very often when people don't have a good relationship with money, they take in this money and they misuse that money. They don't understand that their money is for the business and that they earn a salary in that business. So we do a lot of work in terms of, first of all, their deservedness, that they deserve wealth, that they deserve success, and that they have a responsibility around this money, and their business and their personal are two different things. And then we start to build their confidence, their personal confidence. Only then do we start to scale the business and add money into that business. We take these entrepreneurs through a very tough selection process. 1 in 20 will get through this process. It's an 8-step process, from a first interview to a 2.5-hour test, a second interview to 3 audits, and finally a panel of very scary people. This Dragon's Den thing is not new to us. We've been doing it for 14 years, where we put them in front of a panel who ask them all the tough questions. And once they get through that, then we know we're dealing with an entrepreneur. Now, nowhere in this process do we ever use a thing called a business plan. I've written a book called Lose the Business Plan. Business plans are the worst bloody invention for small businesses, because they're done by third parties who know nothing about the business. When an entrepreneur comes to me and wants me to get invested in them, I ask them very simply one question: how do you make money? If they can't answer that question, then I don't care what's on the piece of paper. And generally what I do is, when they hand me this thing called a business plan, they say, it's here. I take that document and I tear it in half. Okay, and their eyes go like this. I say, okay, now it's not in there. Now you tell me, how do you make money? That's the important thing. That's the thing that we're missing in terms of real entrepreneurship in this country. And our view is rather select the few with blue heart who will then employ it. And it's not this bums on seats, rather select the few. What do we provide those entrepreneurs? We provide them with 8 different components in terms of what we call our value stack. Access to infrastructure, okay, boardrooms, meeting rooms, IT setup, the whole shebang. Back office support, we do their books for them. We provide them with the income statement, balance sheet, debtors days, a whole financial pack on a monthly basis. They get a receptionist if they require that answers in their company name. We provide them with entrepreneurial learning, which is NQF 5+. That is incredibly practical, that they can use on a day-to-day basis. We provide them with guides, not mentors, not coaches, but guides. We provide them with 5 full-time guides: a strategy guide, a finance guide, a marketing guide, a sales guide, and a personal development guide. Strategy, finance, marketing, sales, and personal development. And that's the team who are full-time employed, who work with that entrepreneur to help them get to the next level. Then we provide them access to markets in terms of, we've got over 500 businesses currently that we are incubating right now. We've had over nearly 2,000 businesses that have been through our programs. And we also have principals, corporates who are supplying, paying for bursaries, and we have access to their supply chain. So any principal who supports the program also has access to the 500 others who are potential suppliers to them as well. Access to finance. We don't do the finance. We only give access to the finance, and I'm going to talk a bit about that now, and access to specialists. These are legal specialists, tax specialists, etc. We have a panel of those people available. And finally, and I can say this to all adults here, that's all bullshit, okay? That's all bullshit. Let me talk to you about the top thing. And this is the most fuzzy thing, and I feel very insecure in talking about this in an academic environment. When I started off this talk, I spoke about that 90% of businesses that fail give up. And if you know an entrepreneur, you're married to an entrepreneur, you are an entrepreneur, you will know how lonely that road is, how lonely that journey is as an entrepreneur. And when these entrepreneurs work in these cohorts, when one wants to give up, there is an amazing sense of community that they push each other through those dark moments. And that is the reason, and I wish I was clever enough to have designed that. That happened just by mistake over the last 14 years. And that's the real reason why we've been so successful. The drip and water method, this is here when, as a response to the need to fund, we're saying don't fund up front, put little bits of funding in, and only once they've proven that they can scale, then you put in the bigger money to buy the machinery, etc. So in my first example before, it was only once we got to a certain stage that we would have bought the machine, if at all. We work with a whole bunch of corporate companies, and this is a very interesting slide for me in terms of what we call the TE area, the total economic activity. So what we measure is what is the impact of the spend in terms of the economic activity. This is the average for us across the country. We've got 8 operations around South Africa, 1 in Angola. And for every rand spent, we will generate 3.52 rand in direct, not multiply effect, direct economic activity in that area. And in terms of salary spent in those businesses, 33% more than you spend will just be in the salaries of the companies that are supported. Now, why that's important, because what it says really is if you put the R1 million in the street, you'll get a worse result than you will if you use it in an effective way to build these businesses. For me, I love this cartoon here. Mediocrity is a thing of the past. What we've seen now, it says, don't get too excited, fella. I'm the mediocre Samaritan. I only give you a Band-Aid and then I'm off. That's really been the approach up until now, until very recently, in terms of transformation. It's just Band-Aids. I'm just going to throw money at it. That time is changing. And we're seeing with our big corporates and our big clients that there is a real understanding of how we can use the supply development in the strategic intent of that organization. To A, bring more diversity into the supply chain, B, in order to achieve certain things. So as an example, we work with Investec. Investec spend R1 million on per beneficiary. They've got 12 beneficiaries. They're going to 24 next month. But they use their credit guys, their young credit teams, to be part of the selection, and they are part of the ongoing journey of that entrepreneur for 2 years, to see if the guys, when they came in and did their fancy pitches, if they were bullshitting or they were actually telling the truth. And so the whole intention from Stephen Kosov was that his credit people have a real understanding of what really goes on, and not to sit with a piece of paper and take a view whether we should invest or not. He wanted them to understand that. So they used this as part of their strategic intent in order to use enterprise and supply development for their strategic objectives. And different clients come to us and say to us, can you design certain programs that meet our strategic needs and meet the ESG requirements? I will end off now and ask you to have the courage to, when you are doing enterprise and supply development, to please not pay just lip service to it, but do it in the right way that will have real impact on our entrepreneurs in the country. Thanks very much.